Hey everyone, let's make a gorgeous soap today. I was so thrilled with how this came out. And once again, if you are new to the channel, you may not know my favorite trick, but I'm using my favorite trick for complicated or intricate embeds again today. And I'll be doing a lot more of them because I really am in love with this trick, tip, whatever you want to call it. And I'm in love with really complicated embeds. So, um, hop in and join along, or I mean, it's really not a join along kind of video, but you could get some ideas and maybe learn how to do my favorite trick, and put it to use in your own soaps. It really makes doing soaps with delicate, lacy kind of embeds a lot easier. So if you've seen it before, watch long anyway, because you every time I make a soap and make a video, I learn something new, and it just I think it helps to watch somebody else mess up and fix it. I didn't really mess up in this one though. I don't think. I did one thing that I would fix, and I'll talk about it when I get there. If you're curious as to what these little buttons of color are, when I use these little tiny cups to melt soap or to pour melted soap into. Sometimes I just disperse my mica in those and then pour melted soap. But I went ahead and melted in them. And those are the bottoms. That's what you end up with, the scraps, the leftovers. And I pop them out and reuse them again, like I'm doing right now. If you use them with quite a bit of mica, they almost become like, oh, what are they? Mica blocks, color blocks, very similar. And if you don't use a lot of mica, they're still color blocks. They're just less potent. Um, so, if you have not used these before or seen me using them, please take note. These are very tricky. I don't recommend melting your soap in these. I really recommend blending your mica in them and then pouring the soap in. But this is because I wanted to reuse these, you kind of have to melt it with the soap. So that's what I was doing here. As you'll see here, this is my normal thing. I'll scoop in the mica that I want, and then I didn't in this one, but usually I'll then pour in a little rubbing alcohol. That type of mica doesn't really need it as much. Um, the Golden Buddha and the Sparkle Sunshine. Well, the Sparkle Sunshine doesn't either, really, but the Golden Buddha might. I don't remember if I actually added alcohol to these because in these tinier cups, it doesn't matter as much. It's easier to kind of blend it in there. If you ever use a neon or any kind of pigment or pigment blend, I highly recommend adding the alcohol, or you're going to struggle and have some lumps of color. But anyway, that you might see when I'm doing things like this, other than spilling my soap. That was good. There's something to watch if you're using these little cups. They are easy to spill, and I spill things very easily. So I am a messy, messy soaper. Um, Many of you already know that. But they really make it easy to target where to pour if you aim them correctly, like I almost just didn't right there. But very easy to pour small bits and control in things like marbling and stuff and such. That's kind of when I started using them for pouring, and liking that effect of being able to get really down close and precise. So you see here, I had a couple of little bubbles, and see, this is an embed that's quite delicate and lacy. So I pour the soap and then I scrape it away. Careful when you scrape. I started to scrape here a little too much after it had started to set up, but it wasn't really set up. And so that started to pull up a little bit. So I just went back in with some more soap and let it completely cool. And you'll see the rest of this procedure after I do the second set of leaves, because these leaves, which, I mean, there's so many different ways to look at these leaves, this type of mold here. You could look at it as lace. They look kind of lacy. I think especially this set that I'm pouring right now look like little wire sculptured leaves, little wire wraps or something, because the colors are quite metallic in this. And that's what they reminded me of is some wire leaves I've seen made before, something similar. But another thing they reminded me of is when I was little. Oh, I used to pick up leaves all the time, and any fun thing I would find on the ground. I'm always looking for something shiny, of course, and the leaves weren't shiny. But if ever found one that was just like a leaf skeleton, have you ever seen that? It looks really cool. It basically looks like what these molds look like, and these molds are very flexible and very thin and very delicate because they are made for fondant. They're not made for soap. But uh, we adapt and we are able to use these fondant molds for soap. And I love that so much. Again, this is like my favorite technique as of late is to do this. And I have so many ridiculous ideas for more designs using this particular mold, but some others that I have that have a similar vibe. If you haven't checked it out yet, check out my spooky walk soap, a spooky walk or a spooky night. I don't know what I ended up calling it. It's sad. I don't remember the names of my own videos, isn't it? Um, so what I'm doing now is scraping. I have a kind of a not super sharp knife here. It's on the dull side, and I like it that way for what I'm using it for. I'm just scraping off the color. Don't scrape so hard that you scrape it out of the mold. That is always going to be a caution when you're doing something like this. Um, and I you want to get all the soap off, though. For this technique, you want to get all of the soap obviously in the mold, scrape off as much as you can first, because that would have made this little section here a lot easier had I not goofed it up the first time and tried scraping it either too late or too early, um, or a little of both, really. Um, because if you do it right away with the metal scraper, it just comes off. It's perfect. But if you wait too long, then you're going to start pulling the soap out of the mold. So you have to wait till it thoroughly dries and scrape it off with a knife. I hope that makes some sense. I feel like I was talking out of both sides of my mouth, but saying the same thing. Um, Anyway, you get it clean. So you scrape it, and then if there are some little tiny bits of color or whatever, come back in with a paper towel spritzed with rubbing alcohol, and you can clean that up quite nicely. You want the mold to be clean. It doesn't make sense because who cares if the mold's clean, right? But you'll see why in a minute if you've not seen this technique before. And if you have seen it before, you probably already know. We are about to be able to pull these out. That's where the hard part is. It's not easy. I mean, it's not difficult really to get it in these molds. Always spritz them with alcohol first. That's one of the tricks to get it to go into all these little crevices and not make a lot of bubbles and a lot of holes in places that don't fill in. Spritz them with alcohol. You don't need to flood them with alcohol. Spritz them lightly with alcohol. Please use a light sprayer, light little um, whatever you call it, fingertip sprayer is what I get. I get them at the Walmart travel section. Oh, somebody gave me a really good suggestion of where to find them, and I forgot what it is. So you'll have to look in the notes of one of the comments of one of my last videos or so. I think it was the spooky walk one. But when you spritz it with alcohol, it helps it to go in. If you spritz with something that is like made to spray halfway across the room, you're gonna get too much alcohol and it's not gonna go in very well. So you're cleaning it off because after I fragrance this with one of my very favorite fragrances, I really love this one for fall, and that's the Applewood. This is a tough one to say for me. Applewood Fir Needle. It's Wholesale Supplies Plus. I know some of you have some stank going on with them because they're rearranging all their products or their not I know that's not the right word, but their program that runs everything, and they've had some difficulties. And I'm giving them a break because I absolutely have had nothing but really really good service from them, and and I love their products. They're really um to me that there's just nothing that compares. not to the soap base and not to a lot of their products really, and not to the service and the shipping. I mean, I if you talk to them and not, just get upset and go rant on online, they're usually pretty good. I don't know. And yeah, I know I can't speak for your experiences. I know a lot of you seem to have had some pretty rough experiences with this new thing, but I still purchase from them, and they're still my favorite. So this is, from Wholesale Supplies Plus. It's apple wood fir needle again, and I just using it at 1%. So, pouring the clear on here, the reason I fragranced that clear is if you have a fragrance oil that even slightly colors or discolors the soap base, you want it to match the rest of the soap base. So even though you're just using a little bit, I really highly recommend putting just same percentage you're using when you do the full soap. Um, and you'll see what we do with what that little clear layer does. I don't scrape it back off. I was just spreading it out, just so you know. And then this is just a little marble. Well, it's not really a marble technique, but a little very thin swirl. So the thickness of this is about a quarter inch, maybe a little less. It looks like more than it is. Yes, I did leave a little clear noggin, little nugget of soap. It was just a little bit of soap that hadn't quite melted, and I didn't want to burn the rest of it and put it back in. And I thought, oh, I could fish it out, but honestly, in a soap like this, it doesn't matter. So I left it. If you have a little clear spot in a soap like this, who cares? It still is going to look cool, guaranteed. Um, so I end up adding a little bit more soap to my little container there with the vintage wine color and going back over it, because not because I didn't like the gold. I thought it looked really pretty, but I thought it would make my soap a little too busy. It's a little busier than I wanted it. I want the leaves to be the busy part and the background to be more of kind of an abstract swirl of color. And that's what this is a nice background. So just putting a little bit more um, soap in that's a little less opaque, so a little less of the mica. It still lets that glitter shine through. So here's the magic of this trick. And you do want to bend anytime you're removing an embed. You want to bend the mold more than you bend your soap. So obviously the soap is quite flexible anyway, and you see it pulling out. But if you're bending the soap more than the mold, you might have it separate from your little clear soap. There's something to kind of go back on myself because I didn't mention the temperature, but you want to pour that clear pretty hot, not insanely hot, but it needs to be higher than your melting point for Wholesale Supplies Plus, the Crafter's Choice. This is obviously the premium crystal clear. I've shown you that a few times. That is the melting point for that is around 125. 120 to 125 is what the website says. Their premium soaps and some of the other soaps are a little closer to 125. Their detergent free are closer to 120. Um, and so I think I poured it around 130. I don't remember. I probably showed you I try to show you my thermometer when I can, and I've been trying to be more cognizant of catching that on screen and not missing it. But I don't remember if I did for that or not. I poured it around 130 over the top. And I poured it hot going in too because it spreads easier and goes into the little cracks and crevices. I never take my soap past the I don't like to take it to 140, but I have on accident really a couple times. But if it take it past there, I just don't trust that it's going to stay soap. You can really mess up a soap by getting it too hot. And that goes for any melt and pour soap, but you have to know your melting point. And some are a lot higher than that, so people just assume this one's going to be that hot and they burn their soap. And then it gets rubbery, and then like, why is my soap rubbery? Probably heated it too hot. You really need a thermometer. Yes, I am cutting the soap with scissors, or I was. Kind of a weird and silly idea I had. I had a pair of scissors that did it a lot better before. Um, and you always sanitize them first and kind of keep to your crafting scissors and not scissors you're using to trim your nose hairs with. But I stopped doing that. It was starting to get a little annoying because it was they weren't sharp enough. That it wasn't the right pair of scissors, and so I wanted to go for the more organic look. I didn't want any of the harsh edges to show, and I'll prove to you in a minute that that doesn't really matter that much because they're not going to show as long as your soap is cleared. I really have a hard time unless you really did super thick. I don't think it's going to show. Well, you'll see when I cut the rest here because the second batch, the second little strip of those is a thicker layer of clear. You may have seen that I poured it on and I didn't really spread it that much. I let it spread on its own and spritzed it with alcohol, which made that set much thicker in the soap. And I was a little worried about them showing about the edges because I didn't want to try to trim directly up against the leaf for many reasons. One, I thought it might pull it off of the clear, but the other is that's very time consuming and a pain in the neck, and I didn't want to try to do it. And I'm assuming that you didn't want to do it either. And while I am not the queen of fast and easy, I do, I like complicated soaps and such. I also try to save you time when I can. And this is something that saved a lot of time for me, just kind of going around the edge of it. It didn't need to be perfect. This is more how I originally did this technique when I did my snowflakes in my flurries soap, which I think the name of the soap, if you're looking for it, the name of the video is something about my best tip ever or something like that. So, and because it is, I mean, it is at least for embeds. It's my best tip. I try to share any good tips I can find with you, anything that helps me make better designs or make them easier. I try to share. I don't gatekeep that information. You're not, if you are a member, you are not paying for information that is secret. You might pay for a little extra details on maybe where I did this or what inspired me to make that soap or something. That'll come down the road with the higher paying tiers that I don't have up yet, but I want to share all the good stuff with everybody. That's what this channel is about, is teaching you the best I can um, how to make art out of soap. So here we go with the second layer. I the first is my background and now come the leaves. I originally had a different idea in mind for how I wanted to place them, but I like the way it came out better. I'm glad I kind of gave up on that idea. Why am I cutting some of the leaves in half? If you've seen me do these types of soaps, you already know it's about placement. It's about wanting the picture to continue off of the edge of the soap. Getting when you get a soap like this, you're getting a piece of a picture. Um, so that's the way I look at it. I like that look, and I will probably always do that look unless I'm doing something very simplistic, which I did do later on in another soap I'm showing, which is another fall soap. I did something more simplistic with putting a single item in, and that's a different look. So when I'm using multiples and they're randomly placed, first, I like it to go off the edge of the picture. Even with some that aren't necessarily random, I do like to complete the picture. Um, I don't know. Maybe that's just something I do and like to do, but I like the look of it. So I'm sticking with it for now. If I do something that isn't like that, that specifically, I will maybe point it out to you. Because I'm not even sure if you get what I mean with that, but I like to try to tell you a little bit about the design elements of it, not just here, do this soap and make this embed and plop your embeds in your soap because I said so. I mean, I like to give you some of my thoughts behind it. You might have different ideas for something else and it might spark something in you. I do like to try to inspire you to do something unique and different. You could, as you may have seen, I have done several of this style of soap. I have done bats and I've done spiders. And then I did one that was kind of like spooky trees. It was a little bit different because of the way the design of the mold I had was, but it was the same idea with a layered kind of swirled background with embeds over top, and that kind of just being It's not the highlight and the feature of it, but it looks really cool. And so this one, watch this trick. I know you can see those clear edges right now. Oops, I forgot to spray that one. Had to pull it up. Here's the part I'd change about this. I did put these with the lace part or the textured part facing down and the clear facing up. And I did it on purpose, but then I was kind of sorry I did it. But then at the end I didn't care because it still came out really cool. But there are a lot of bubbles that end up in this soap, not around the leaves really, but more under them, and they almost look like I did it on purpose. They look really cool. You will have way too many bubbles, and you will definitely see the edges of the clear if you don't spritz the back or whatever part is going to go face down in the soap. You have to spritz it with alcohol or you will get bubbles. And that is a promise. Um, so once I don't know if you saw those first two that I put down and then I poured more soap over them. Once you spritz it with alcohol a second time, spritz the back, put it in, spritz it again, and pour more soap over it. I usually do a few leaves at a time that way, so I'm not, you got to kind of see how your soap is doing and how the heat of it is. You don't want to melt any embeds, and you also don't want to put it down on top of soap that looks like it's got a skin on it. So that's why I'll sometimes pour more soap over the top of that. It isn't that it's set up, it's just setting up enough to cause bubbles and wrinkles and all kinds of things you don't want. So that's why I keep layering. It's called I was calling it fluid layering before, that kind of idea. I don't know. Um, I it really is a separate technique from some other things I do. So I think I am going to stick with fluid layering. But watch these rough pulled edges that I just kind of tore off, and you can see them really clearly when you put them down, but once you pour the clear soap over them, they disappear. When I challenge you at the end, you might be able to see some if you're looking for them, and I pull these up close. You are getting up close and personal with these soaps when it gets to pictures. And look for them. Look and see if you can see them. I think I saw one in one of the pictures that showed to me a little. But if you're not looking for them, you're definitely not going to see them. And if you're looking for them, you might. But I mean, who is going to be looking for that in a soap? Unless you're just watching a tutorial and the person making the tutorial challenges you to look for them. But it just shows that this technique is really cool and there's so many possibilities, of really cool, intricate techniques, not techniques, intricate embeds like snowflakes, like leaves, like creepy trees and spiders. And anyway, fun stuff. And it to me, it opens up the world of possibilities. I have so many other of these um, fondant molds. I purchased a bunch at once, and I've got so many ideas. I'm just dying to do more. But always remember to spray the back, or you'll end up with more bubbles than you want. When you look at the close-ups of these, I want you to notice where the bubbles are, because they look like they're kind of part of the design. They're coming through the little holes, the little lacy part. They're on the inside, and they're kind of even. I wouldn't say every single one of them has a bubble, but enough of them do where it looks like it was on purpose. It looks really cool. I find that some occasionally my mermaid soaps get that. They'll get a little bubble like right on each scale or under each scale, and it looks so cool, and it looks like it's on purpose. This looks like it could be little drops of dew, or I don't know. It looks neat. Anyway, look for that in the close-up pictures at the end too. As far as placement goes, whatever you like. I like them in something like this, especially. I like them to layer over top of each other, so they're connected, just so there's not one just out floating in space. I like them all to be connected some way. Um, and I'm pretty sure I accomplished that in here. And then you always follow with a clear layer of soap. I almost had to go back and heat this one up. I did not heat this a second time. And if you're using a soap with a lower melting point, you might be able to do the same thing. If you have a higher melting point and you have to melt it partway through, just go easy on it. It's not going to need as much time when you're remelting. Go in at like, 10, 15 seconds at a time and go easy. And the little I forgot to tell you, I've told you before, but the little tiny cups, don't heat them longer than 5 seconds at a time. Even if you have fresh soap going in, 5 seconds at a time, stir. 5 seconds, stir. Um, Trust me. I really recommend you don't do it. Do as I say, not as I do, I guess is the phrase. Um, it's complicated. You're very likely to overheat your soap. It's really easy to. And I've just played with it enough that I've gained enough trust in myself that I think I have a handle on it most days. I do like this. This is a brambleberry mold, and I really like it because it's just the right size to play with a design. You could probably cut them differently than I do. I just quarter it, and you end up with some squares. But I like to watch it as you saw it kind of popping out there. You can see it slipping away from the back, so you know where it's at and what's going on. And if you look at it from the edge, if you're trying to see how high up your soap is coming, you can see that quite clearly. Um, and it's a sturdy mold, very nice mold, and but yet flexible enough to that it lets the soap out fairly easily. Um, the longer you let a soap sit, the easier it is going to be to unmold. Just uh, from my experience, I typically as of late have not been allowing myself enough time to unmold, and I rush it a little bit. That happens when you're doing something like a video and you've got a lot of you have to finish, you have to film, you have to all get all these things done and then go and still make dinner when you get home. So, but I recommend leaving it till it's really solid. This one I was pretty close. This one was pretty pretty well set up. It just took a little bit more coaxing it to come out of the mold. But you don't have to trim these, but when I do a soap that's face up, I like to because you're likely to get kind of wonky edges a little bit if you're doing a soap where the design is facing up to you. Um, but I find that easier than trying to do one face down to where everything is upside down. I like to be able to see what I'm doing. I like to be able to see the design develop as I'm going and not chance on what in the heck's on the other side of this because it's just I don't know. That's just me. I used to do a lot of them more face down. I still do some that way. I think I make my mermaids that way. Yeah. Okay, here we go. This um, is Autumn Leaves, and I love it. And I told you these soaps would be in your face. I wasn't joking, was I? They are up close and personal. And I'm hoping you don't see the edges of the clear the embeds where the clear was helping you get them out of the mold. I don't. And I don't know if you can see the bubbles from every angle. I'm looking at it kind of on the smaller side while I'm recording, but I know when I ran through it a few different times after editing, I could see them quite well. Yeah, I think you can really see them in there. The light catches them. I think they look neat. They could look like little drops of dew or rain or just little sparkly bits. I don't know. There is a little bit of glitter in the background because of that sunshine sparkle I added in there, even though I covered it up. I made sure you could still see it, and it shines through nicely, I believe. And but I'm really happy with everything. The color choice, I love the dark purple and wine colored backgrounds. I think it looks beautiful against the autumn colors. I wasn't sure if I was going to be, but I was. I was thrilled with it. So um, I hope that you get a chance to try something out like that with a fondant embed because it's really fun. It may take a little while to get the hang of it, but it really isn't hard. It's just remembering all the steps and remembering to do things like spritz with alcohol. Thanks. Bye.